Get ready for University of Georgia basketball.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Georgia and Bellamine preview. Of course, this won't be out till Monday, but so if that's the case, Georgia basketball plays its first game of the season today versus the Bellamine Knights. And to be honest with you, I don't know much about Bellamine, so this is going to be more of a Georgia preview. The starting lineups don't come out until 5 to 10 minutes before the game, so I don't have that at the moment. But the only thing I remember about Bellamine was a few years ago they jumped up from Division 2 to Division 1. They were playing really good games. Haven't paused this for a second. And then they had a very weird offense of where they didn't really dribble the ball, they threw it. They would dribble it down the court, but their actual offense would be throwing the ball. They would throw it to the center, then the center would throw it back to the point guard, and he would shoot a three or something very weird like that. And respect Bellamine because, their story, if you really understand Bellamine basketball, look at their story, it is very, very incredible. So with that said, we're actually about to see what conference they're in. Because after Bellarmine, after Georgia, they play Kansas State. They're in the ASUN, so they're in the conference. Kennesaw State used to be in. They are in the Atlantic Sun Conference. They are led by head coach Doug Davenport, and they play their home games at Knight Hall, which is an on-campus. Arena. Scott Davenport retired last year. I remember that, and I remember the year they were really good. They couldn't make the tournament. It says their first ever win in Division 1 was against Howard. 84-63. If you're wondering where they're at, they're in Louisville, Kentucky. So they're in the same place that Louisville Cardinals are in too, but obviously you don't hear much about them. So yeah, let's get it straight. Georgia, that's a little about Bellamine. Now let's go to Georgia. Well, this is Georgia's first game of the year. If you remember last year, Georgia and Tennessee Tech was the first game of the year, and Georgia struggled. Tennessee Tech was hitting everything they shot in the first half, and they just wouldn't miss. And Georgia eventually did come back very, very late in the game and sealed it. But it was just one of those things that Georgia had to scrawl and fight and fight their way for a win. Or scratch and claw, that's what I was looking for. They had to scratch and claw their way to a victory, and eventually they did. And excuse me, I didn't mean to pause it, but I did. I don't think tonight's going to be any worse than that, because I think Georgia should be. Like I said, Bellamine will have a new head coach, so first games are always rough for head coaches, especially that you're going on an SEC. You're going to an ACC team. Georgia might win this game by 20 or 30 points. And to some people, that's obviously the expectation. For example, a team like Tennessee, they're opening up the season versus my local team, Mercer. And they're looking at a game like that. Tennessee and Mercer is, and like they're thinking, well, okay, we should win this game by 20 or 30 points. Sometimes that's not how it works out. People forget Kentucky a few years lost to Evansville. Duke lost to I think it was Evansville. Duke lost to too. It might have been Duke who lost to Evansville, not Kentucky. If that's the case, then please forgive me. But the rest of the SEC scores, and there are some games, there are not any early games, I believe. Yeah, they're all very, very late. So we'll go through the list of games and who I have winning. Missouri opens up against Howard at 7 o'clock. Obviously, I think Missouri will have a better year than they've had last year. I'm really high on Missouri. Florida and Arizona at 7 o'clock on TNT. This is one that'd get people mad at me. I have Florida winning. I think that I tell people who I know who are Florida fans, I tell them this. It's very scary when you win the national championship and then the year later your roster after a national championship, it's even more scarier than your roster that won the national championship. So I think Florida wins that game, and I'm calling it right now. I know this is very early. I think Florida only loses 5 games or less. 5, maybe 6. 6 games or less. I think Florida loses, and I think 3 of them will be in non-conference play. So I think they should roll through the SEC. Southern and Arkansas at 7 o'clock. Obviously, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mercer at 7 o'clock on SEC Plus. My heart says Mercer, but unfortunately, Tennessee is going to roll Mercer. So Tennessee, Northwestern State, and Texas A&M at 8 o'clock on SEC Plus. Texas A&M, they're not really predicted to do good this year, but I would always watch out for Texas A&M. Vanderbilt and Lipscomb at 8 o'clock on SEC Plus. I am so proud of Mark Byington. I'm trying to think of words. I watched his entire career at Georgia Southern. I wasn't a fan at first, or we were fans, but we really didn't know much about basketball. So we watched his entire tenure at Georgia Southern. The fact he's brought Vanderbilt up to be such a great team is very nice to see. Vanderbilt is having very impressive turnarounds in football and basketball. Whoever would have thought we're talking about Vanderbilt being ranked in the top 10 in football as well. So Vanderbilt wins. Auburn and Bethune-Cookman. Auburn, that game's at 8 o'clock on SEC Plus. Alabama and North Dakota at 8 o'clock on SEC Plus. This is actually a return trip. Last season, Alabama went to North Dakota, and it wasn't close if I remember right. And this game obviously won't be close as Alabama rolls North Dakota. At 8 o'clock, SEC Plus, Southeastern Louisiana and Ole Miss. I have Ole Miss winning, and then at 8:30 on SEC Plus, St. Francis and Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma winning that game, so I have every SEC team winning their opening game. And then, of course, Georgia and Bellarmine. I have, as I drop my phone, I have Georgia winning that game. Now, do not forget that this is also the start of the women's basketball season. So we'll go through the women's basketball SEC slate. And Ole Miss has the first game in women's basketball versus Norfolk State at 12 o'clock. I have Ole Miss winning that game. Then at 2:30, California and Vanderbilt on ESPNU. This would be very unpopular. I actually have California winning that game. Stetson, Alabama at 5 o'clock. I have Alabama winning that game on SEC Plus. Oklahoma at Belmont at 5:30. On SEC Plus, I have Oklahoma winning that game. Auburn and Charlotte 5:30. ESPN Plus. That game's at Charlotte, but I have Auburn winning that game. 6:30, Morehead State and Kentucky on SEC Plus. I have Kentucky. At 7 o'clock, North Florida and Florida. At 7 o'clock, Grand Canyon and South Carolina. And Grand Canyon is a very, very sneaky team in women's basketball. But Dawn Staley is the GOAT, and she'll get it done always. South Carolina wins. 7:30 on SEC Plus. Davidson and Mississippi State. I have Mississippi State, Central Arkansas, Missouri. SEC Plus 7:30 Missouri. Incarnate Word and Texas 8 o'clock SEC Plus. Yes, SEC Plus. I have Texas at 8 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock the start of a doubleheader: Georgia and Alabama State at 5 o'clock on SEC Plus. Obviously, we have Georgia winning that game. So we have every SEC team winning except for Vanderbilt. Okay. And yes, if you did not know, Georgia, I say it's a doubleheader. It is a doubleheader. And Georgia won their last 3 of 2 games. That's very impressive. I forgot about that. We beat Auburn, beat Tennessee, and beat Arkansas. If you are wondering, Georgia and Alabama State women's basketball at 5 o'clock, and then after the women's game at 7:30, Georgia and Bellarmine in men's basketball. So that's pretty much all the news. And then real quick, I'm just gonna talk about the game again. Georgia should win big, and Georgia should have no problem putting Bellarmine away. I'm not going to be one of them people who make fun of Georgia if we only win by 5 or 10 or 15, because, at the end of the day, a win's a win. So I wouldn't dare argue. I wouldn't dare argue about winning a game, but we're very excited for it. I'm happy college basketball's back. I've missed this sport. I'm thankful that we get this sport every year. I've missed it. So radio coverage at 7:05 on Georgia Bulldog Sports Network. Radio coverage, I think, at 5:15 for the women's broadcast. And yeah, Georgia and Bellarmine. Georgia's showing big. I'll do a score prediction. I don't really know what would be a good score prediction for this game. I think Georgia 91, Bellarmine 49. I think that's a good prediction. 91-49, Georgia wins it over Bellarmine. That's just a prediction, but I'll take any win for Georgia, of course. So again, Georgia and Bellarmine. Go Dogs, and let's beat the Knights.
Arkansas and go wire to wire to win the SEC tournament.